Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by asking you, Dr. Sandor, or Dr. I'm sorry, it's next to you with a B. Right. Mr. Markey has just asked a series of questions having to do with the market and a series of questions focusing on the windfalls that occurred. I am concerned that this isn't really a valid market, and I am concerned that whenever we decide to try to create a market, which is what we're trying to do, somehow we have to figure out how to create it correctly, or we do create windfalls. Obviously, Mr. Markey is deeply concerned about those windfalls, and I guess I'm concerned that it is the government price setting at the outset which results in the creation of such windfalls. And I don't know how I can explain to my constituents something like occurred in England, where, as I understand it, two things happen at once. One, the price of electricity goes up by 16%. I can assure you that my constituents are going to be extremely unhappy if their electricity goes up by 16%, if the cost of their electricity goes up by 16%, and they don't know why, or they believe it's greenhouse gases, and then they read that somebody is saying this is a windfall profit. But I've got some pretty smart consumers, and they're going to say, well, wait a minute, why were there windfall profits? And somebody's going to say, well, Congressman, it's because you created this cap and trade program. And I believe that those going to be, pardon my expression, heck to pay for me creating, and I guess some argument is made that, Dr. Sander, you say, well, just do it. You know, it may be a mistake. You may cause a problem. We heard that same testimony 2 days ago. Well, just do it. I think that just do it doesn't work very well for an elected official who has to go home and say the cost of electricity just went up by 16%, and somebody's making a windfall profit, neither of which would have occurred had you figured out a better way to achieve this end. Go ahead, Doctor.
But number one, if we take a look at the SO2 program with bonus allowance.
Look, the SO2 I think is simply not applicable. SO2 came from a limited number of sources. This comes from a vastly greater number of sources. This SO2 is a discrete pollutant as compared to carbon dioxide.
I'm not suggesting the problem. You think the analogy I'm making is there were windfalls in SO2?
No, I'm making the analogy that there were windfalls in Europe. That's okay. What Mr. Markey is.
Both of those, but let me just say from my point of view, I am as a professional economist, okay, and putting on that hat, the allocation of what you do doesn't matter. A man by the name of Ronald Coase won a Nobel Prize for that and says for the efficiency of the market it doesn't matter, okay? That is leading to the right price. It is not my particular role as from the equity point of view, from an exchange thing, to really bring the expertise. I can't tell you I would look to find a way that windfall through the regulatory process is going to the consumer, but that's more the expertise that you have as politicians than I have as a trader and an economist.
I can tell you, from a standpoint of economics, it may not matter initially, and I understand the witness from England is saying, look, in phase one, here's what we suffered through, but in phase two, we went to an auction process, and in the auction process, we resolved that. You're shaking your head. Expand on your point, ma'am.
I think there's two things. One, the 16% increase in electricity prices, I'm not sure if that's the right figure, was due to an increase, largely two-thirds of it at least, was due to an increase in gas, not because there was an increased demand because of the carbon pricing gas. In fact, there was switching from gas to coal in the UK during that time, but because of supplies of gas for other reasons. So, and as I pointed out earlier, I believe that for other reasons you had increases in electricity prices in the US in that year as well. But I think the point that you can actually deal with windfall profit through allocation methodology, I'm shaking my head because we're not going to full auctioning in phase two.
I think the 16% price increase was in fact linked to the imposition of the cap and trade system in Europe. Dr. Smith, you talk about, I mean, they occurred at the same time, so it's going to be hard to explain to voters or to constituents that they are not a result of the other, of one or the other. Dr. Smith, you talked about increased impacts as a result of price uncertainty and price volatility. Would you expand on that?
Well, price volatility, because the prices will be passed through into electricity and other energy prices if the system is actually economy-wide as it ought to be, then that will translate into volatility in the prices of goods and services throughout the economy. It'll be a little bit dampened, it'll be a little bit, with time lags, et cetera, but nevertheless, as long as you have a system that gives you a huge amount of uncertainty about where prices will be for carbon, you've got a huge amount of uncertainty about what the cost of living is going to be, very soon thereafter.
Let me just one last question. If we were to implement this, would you suggest that it have a lead time during which it was advisory and not obligatory? That is, it was in some way to allow it to fluctuate before it actually damaged the market, before it actually did that, a period of years to let it function before it was implemented, or is that not a possibility?
Very quickly, Dr. Smith, very quickly, please.
That's impossible to do. The only way to manage that volatility is to put a price cap on the market directly.
Thank you very much. The gentleman's time has expired.